We are going.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie Ransom, and I'm the Teaching and Learning Product Specialist for Leganto. Thank you so much for joining the session today. It's something that we've been kind of talking about doing for a while now, so I'm very happy to see all of you on the call today and to understand that this is indeed a topic that you are interested in. So during this session, I will be talking about some of the configuration options in Leganto, which you can use to help cut down on some of the processing work that your library may do related to reading lists. I'll talk about this really in terms of the implications of those configurations, so you can kind of get an idea of what this would mean for your workflows, what this would mean in terms of, pros and cons for the instructor experience. I will make a few recommendations, although I want to really emphasize that these are general recommendations, and I certainly understand that every library will do things differently and every library will make different decisions. So they're sort of soft recommendations, if you will, if you are struggling with some of your library workflows, if you feel like there's room to cut down on some of the processing that you're doing. I'll be making some suggestions for ways to do that. So ultimately, it'll be up to you to decide within your library about which processing tasks you can let go of or automate. I really think this is the most challenging part, and I certainly can't make those decisions for you, but my hope is that this presentation will give you the framework that you need to start having those conversations internally within your library, and then also the details about how to configure this. So that's really the goal of the session. I do have a lot of information to share. Those of you who have met me know that I tend to talk quite a bit, so I will apologize in advance if it feels like I am throwing a lot of information at you during this session. As Jenny said, we'll make the recording available, and I will also make my slides available after the session. And the slides include several links to documentation or additional videos or other resources that can help you kind of dive in a little bit more into some of the things that I'll be talking about today. I do also plan to save time for questions, so please feel free to put your questions or your comments into the chat. Maybe you've tried some of these things, maybe you purposely haven't. They don't necessarily have to be questions. Feel free to put any comments or feedback or questions into the chat. Depending on your questions, I may answer them as we go, or I may save them until the end. So if it seems like I'm ignoring you, I do plan to save time at the end of the session. So I think with that as an intro, we'll go ahead and just dive in now. So the first thing to start with is this primary question: which citations does the library need to review? And for the purposes today or moving forward, I really want you to think about this, especially if your gut instinct is to say all of them, that your library needs to review all of the citations. Is this actually true? Do you actually need to review all of them? And also, why are you reviewing all of them? How often do you actually need to make changes to different types of citations? Maybe you've been using Leganto for a while and you're starting to realize which tasks take more time or more brain power, and which ones you sort of breeze past and maybe don't do too much with, which those are the ones that could be potentially automated. On the other hand, maybe you're brand new to Leganto and you worry that starting to roll out to more courses or more instructors could end up being a big investment on the library's time as you start to support more resources. So in this case, maybe you're also thinking about what you actually need to do, which citations does the library really need to do. So either way, I think this is a question you should ask within your library on a somewhat regular basis, maybe yearly or every few years. Do we really need to do this specific piece? And also, why are we doing this specific piece? So this will be something for you to do. This is your homework, I guess, after the session. Through the session today, I will be making a few assumptions. So the first is that you don't want to spend all of your time processing citations, and that you have joined today because you are indeed looking for ways to cut down on some of your processing tasks. And the second is that you're using the ALMA task list to process reading lists. So what I mean here is that you're starting with either the reading list task list or the citation task list. I know from talking to libraries that this may not be true for all of you. I know that libraries have kind of different starting places or different ways that they kind of pick up the processing workflows. So for that, I want to just do just a quick check here, just to make sure that what I'm talking about is clear. So out of the box, the way that Leganto works and the way that the workflows were sort of intended to be used is that you would use the ALMA task list to understand what you needed to work on. So when instructors submit their lists to the library, or also, realistically, if the library is building the list in Leganto and then either submitting it or publishing it, you may have processing that needs to happen on the library side or inside of ALMA for those resources. So when the lists are submitted, they go into the unassigned ready for processing task list here. And at the same time, any citations on those lists which are not already complete will go into the citations ready for processing task. So there is some overlap here, depending on whether you're looking at the list level or the citation level. If you go in at the list level, it will show you all of the citations on a list, and you can filter this to the ones that are not already complete. And then this will show you the ones that you need to work on. If you go in through the citation task list, it by default shows you the ones that are ready for processing. So either way, the idea is that you will work your way through the different citations that require library attention and set them to complete as you go. And I'm emphasizing this as a starting point because what I want to talk about quite a bit today are the different options to have different types of citations automatically complete. And this means that they won't be in your task lists, or if you have this filtered out so that you're not looking at the ones that are complete, you won't see them here. You can always see them in ALMA if for some reason you want to monitor them or need to do a spot check or something like that. You would be able to find them. But the idea is that I'm sitting down to work on this reading list or to work on, citations, and I can very easily get to the ones that actually require some sort of human intervention on the part of the library. So you work your way through the tasks and then you set them to complete as you go. If you're not working this way today, or this is new to you, I'm really not going to talk about it anymore, but I do want to point to some resources which you may want to take a look at. The first is that we have a brand new training kit. The Leganto for Library Staff kit has been just recently redone. It's very nice. The videos are a little bit shorter and right to the point. And there are videos about working with these task lists or working with citations. And if you'd like a little bit more, there's also a much longer video, 38 minutes, which walks you through all of this, but as part of a single video, as part of a single step. So you can take a look at that as well. So with that, we're now going to actually dive in. So that was really just my introduction. But what I want to start by talking about is my very favorite configuration table. Those of you who have spoken with me in the past probably have heard me talk about this. I feel like I am just nerdy enough that I can have a favorite configuration table, but this is the course reserves automatic statuses table. So I really believe that this is the most powerful configuration table in Leganto when you're talking about library workflows. So essentially with this table, you can customize which types of citations your library will need to review and which types of citations will be automatically set to complete, meaning that there's nothing the library needs to do to process these. So going back to the task list, the more citations that you have that automatically mark as complete, the fewer tasks there are for you at the library. So we'll talk about some specific options for that. You can also use this task list to change the status of citations when specific things happen, such as when a purchase request is submitted, when a resource sharing request is submitted, when a new citation is added to a list which you've already finished processing, different things like that. I'll talk about this just a little bit. With both of these, you also do have the option to set custom citation statuses in Leganto. If you have, specific steps in the workflow that you need to be able to, filter to or track or easily share with another person, for example. So you can combine these with specific other statuses that you've created, but I will also not really be talking about that today because I really want to focus on that streamlining aspect. So just as a little bit of background, last fall we changed the out-of-the-box settings for Leganto. For Leganto customers whose, I'll be specific, whose Leganto environments were provisioned after the August 2020 release, there are out-of-the-box settings in this table for which types of citations will be automatically marked as complete or not. And when we went through this and figured out these new out-of-the-box settings, we were really focused on how can we set the system up so that it's very easy to get up and running with Leganto, so that sort of minimal work on the part of the library to start using this, to start supporting course materials in potentially a different way. So out of the box, Leganto is set up to have the library review physical items, uploaded files, and citations that don't have any inventory. And we'll look at what that means in a little bit more detail. So I want to start by talking about what this means for e-resources. So this means that all e-resources, e-books that are managed in Alma, or chapters, books, articles that are coming from CDI, automatically mark as complete. I know for some of you this might be an adjustment, but this is where we're going to start today. So the idea here is that the library already has access to these resources. There's nothing that you need to do to make them available to students because you've already done that work to buy the resources or subscribe to them, maintain your links in the Alma link resolver. So you don't necessarily need to review them if they're going to be used in the course. I know that there are reasons that libraries review them. The two big ones that I'll talk about are checking for broken links and also checking for concurrent user licenses. So this is, one example. Not one way to probably pretty significantly cut down on your library work, your number of tasks, is to have electronic resources automatically complete. A lot of libraries that I talk to do check all of these specifically to look for broken links. But as an alternative to that, I recommend that you consider, instead of checking all of this proactively, just in case there are broken links, rely on the broken link reporting as a way for students and instructors to let you know when a link is broken. So if this is new to you, if this is, if you're sort of shaking your head, we could never do this, think about a couple of questions. How often are the links actually broken? When you check these links, for every single list, how often do you end up needing to fix them? Are your links mostly reliable? Are they, mostly working okay? Is it a couple of vendors that are problematic that maybe need to be fixed? How often do you actually need to make changes for these? Or are you just kind of checking them, they work, and you set it as complete? Another question is, are students or instructors actually marking link as broken? Are they notifying you when something isn't working? How quickly can you respond once they do notify you that a link is broken? So think about these things. If you decide that you will no longer be, proactively checking for broken links, what you will need to do is make sure that you've turned on the broken link reporting. This is the option for students and instructors from the Leganto interface to just click a button and mark that a link is broken. It comes into the Alma task list as citations marked as broken. So you can very quickly and easily see that there are citations that have been marked as broken, which link it is that's been marked as broken, the number of users who have marked it as broken. So you can see all of the information that you need to get that fixed. The other step to this would be that you mark that electronic citations will complete automatically. That's what I showed on the previous slide. But I think the last piece of this is also informing instructors that they can mark links as broken. Some libraries have made the decision that they will not be checking these links, and they will rely on instructors to check them when they add these resources to the course and report them if they're not broken. For libraries who didn't use a reading list tool before Leganto, this tends to be a very good approach, because if you compare this to what was happening in the past, where instructors were probably just telling students to go search for it, or putting links into Moodle or Canvas or the learning management system, the library wasn't checking those links anyway. The links will be more likely to be working because they use the link resolver, as opposed to those permalinks, which are problematic in different ways. So this is something to really think about, especially if you're spending a lot of time working with electronic resource citations today. The other reason that I think people check electronic resources is to check for concurrent user licenses. So this is the same thing, rather than checking all of these one by one just in case, consider using a bulk job to identify concurrent user licenses. So we have the Citation Insights job in Leganto or in Alma, and this is a job that was originally designed to help you track usage, to understand, how your library collection compares to how these resources are actually used. For me, it's always easier to think about this with print, but if your print books are checking out, a million times, maybe you need to get another copy. That's the idea behind this job. But you can also use this job to identify concurrent user licenses, or citations that have concurrent user licenses, because you can put the information in such a way where you would say, I want to see high usage insights where the views per concurrent user license are 0. And this will show you any citation that has a concurrent user license that has been used 0 or more times. So any citation that has a concurrent user license. I'm just going to back up here. You do have to, this looks at the concurrent user field on the license record. So this does require that you use license records in Alma, and specifically that field. If you're not using license records today, I would encourage you to consider starting, even if you only start with 1 or 2 collections, or maybe you have a handful of collections that are problematic for courses. From there, you can put in this concurrent user license information. The job will check and report back on any citations. Here you can see that have the concurrent user. You can see what the concurrent user number is coming from that license record. You don't have to do 0. You could do more if you wanted to actually look at the usage information, but this can be a way to just identify those citations specifically in bulk. And then you would be able to decide, are you going to purchase additional licenses? Are you going to let the instructor know? Are you going to add a note on the citation? Whatever it is that you end up doing from there, but you don't need to check every citation. You can have the system look for this for you. I did mention, sorry, I'm going to flip back again because I want to point out down here, there's a watch a video. So throughout the slides, there's a bunch of different links out to additional resources. So as I said, I'll share this information with you after the session. The other thing that I want to point out, kind of related to this, is that I know that you may also be checking citations because you may have specific collections or specific vendors or specific journals that can't be used in courses because of the agreements with those vendors. You may also have migrated data, and you check citations, you check all citations because you're trying to identify ones that link to maybe files on an older storage system or some other known issue. If this is the case for you, it may be worth playing with analytics to see if you can identify these citations in bulk. I don't have a specific example here. You would need to play around a little bit with it depending on what you're trying to do, but you would be able to use the course reserve subject area, and I would recommend that one because it's not dependent on whether these are used or not. So the course reserve subject area could you potentially use the metadata if you're looking for things from a particular journal that you know are problematic? You could create a report that filters to citations from that journal. Potentially leverage the URL string. So this is in analytics under the source field. This is the URL, but it's also the link resolver URL. I have a little caveat here that there are potentially 11 different source fields, so you may want to add a couple depending on how you have it set up. The link resolver URL should be the first one, but there are some exceptions, so you may want to take a look. Maybe source and then source one just to kind of see what it looks like. But this is actually the link resolver URL. So if there is, something in that URL that can help you identify citations from this particular vendor, from this particular package, this particular provider, whatever it may be that you're trying to catch when you're checking all of these citations, take a look at analytics and see, because you could build a report that filters down to the specific data that you're looking at. My recommendation here would be to start with some known examples, some that are problematic, and take a look at those specifically, and then from there build out the bigger report. And remember also that once you've created the report in analytics, you can turn that into a widget that's sitting there on your Alma dashboard, or you can send it on a scheduled basis as an email. So you could say, we want to send this once a week or once a day, maybe right before the term begins, so that you are able to catch anything that's problematic without having to go in and check, every single citation just in case. So you're probably noticing a theme here, which is getting away from that just in case strategy and instead responding on sort of an as needed basis to the different types of things that that you may be trying to capture as you're reviewing these citations. All right. I have not seen any questions come in the chat. Let me just, so I do see the Q&A. Let me just take a look at this. Can this job be run across all citations, or do you have to have a set pre-made? I assume this is for the one I just showed here, the concurrent user licenses. This is run against a set. So you could create, is that right? You know what? Here's what we'll do. I'll double check because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. So let me just log into Alma here and we'll make sure that it is indeed the case. Now I remember. Yes, you run it against a set of citations. So you could create a set of citations for all of your citations if you wanted to do it that way. You could also create, all of your active courses, whatever it may be. It's under the admin run a job. And here we can go citation, and it's this citation insights job. So it works like all the other ones that are, in this admin run a job. You select the set of citations that you're going to run this job against, and then you put in the parameters. So as I said, this job was originally designed to help you, look for your existing collection compared to the usage. So you'll fill in the details of what you're trying to capture here. Okay, let me go back to the slides. Let's see if I lost them. There we go. Okay, so let's go on now. So the next thing that I want to talk about is websites. This is another thing that you may be reviewing today, citations that aren't actually library resources, that are links out to other websites. So this is another situation to kind of think about, why are you checking these websites, or do you need to check these websites? Again, this is probably easier for libraries that aren't coming from an existing system where this wouldn't have involved you in the past. They would have just linked out to these websites through the learning management system. So this is another one that you have some flexibility around how this is going to work. The first reason that you might be checking these websites is for broken links. You can use the same options that that I talked about before, where you rely on students or instructors to mark those links as broken. But there is also a job in Alma that can help you identify broken links with a rather large kind of but here. it will only identify links that don't have a valid response, a valid HTTP response. So if the website works, but it goes to the wrong website, it won't be able to catch those for you. This is something where that broken link reporting might be helpful, but it will be able to tell you if the website just doesn't work, or maybe it was typed in wrong, or something like that. So this is actually the process and enrich citations job. Again, if you're not familiar with this one, I have a link out to more details about this, but you can use this job to, you would check the checkbox to validate external links, and then it gives you a report that has any broken links or citations that have broken links. So you'd be able to go and just look at those specifically. So that's one reason that you may be checking websites, is to look for those broken links. I think the other big one is copyright. If you are, checking websites because you know that your institution doesn't allow certain websites, or some websites are specifically prone to having copyright breaches on them, you can configure Leganto so that you only review certain websites. So in this case, most of the websites will complete, most of the websites will complete, but certain ones will be sent to your task list and brought to your attention. This is called Citation Filtering. The Citate tool, of course, being the way that you can very easily bring websites into Leganto. So as part of this, you can specify if you want to use a whitelist or a blacklist. I always have to look at the examples to remember which is which here. But the idea behind the blacklist is that all websites will automatically complete unless it's one of the ones that you've configured. You can have, strings, you can have extensions like the .edu at the bottom. You can say, if it's an Amazon website, we want to review it because this might be a book that the library would want to purchase. Perhaps you include, different book providers that you want to look at, maybe your campus bookstore. If you want to look at YouTube to check to make sure that, it seems like these videos have been loaded legally, you can flag specific types of resources, or specific types of websites, excuse me, and bring those to your attention. That's the idea behind the blacklist. And then the idea behind the whitelist is that all websites will require you review except for the ones that you configure. Those will be automatically complete. So if you want to look at most things, but if it has a certain extension, or if it's coming from a certain provider, then you don't need to look at it. So you need to decide which way you're going to do it, whitelist or blacklist, and then you need to define the list of websites. You can always change it. You can always add more. So if you kind of, monitor these things and see which ones might be more problematic, and use that to build out this list over time. So again, either way, however you decide to set this up, you should be able to cut down on the number of websites that you're going to review. You can, of course, also set it up so that you don't review any. That's certainly an option as well. But if there are certain reasons that, today you want to have the library review citations, then you can configure the system to push those to you and bring them to your attention. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about here is the uploaded files. So this is another one that can be a little bit sticky. You know what, before we move on, I do see a question. So I have a question on this that says, can you use both a whitelist and a blacklist concurrently? And the answer to this is no. So you will need to decide if you want to use whitelist or blacklist. So you'll need to pick, and I would recommend picking the one that you think will capture most things. So if for the most part, you think you should be reviewing websites, then I would go with whitelist. If for the most part you don't want to, you don't care, you don't need to, then go with blacklist. So you'll need to decide which one will get you the closest to what it is that you're trying to do. Let me just check the Q&A as well while we're paused. I don't see anything there. Okay, so let's go on now and take a look at uploaded files. Another thing that you might be reviewing, and I would say this one can be a little bit stickier because of the copyright implications here, but I do still want to talk about it. So I'll just acknowledge that, that I know that this won't be a good fit for everybody, but I will go through it anyway because I know this will be helpful to some institutions. Again, the idea here being that rather than monitoring all uploaded files, you only check specific ones. And my recommendation here really relies on the instructor to help you with this, relies on the instructor to say, this is one that I need the library to check. This is one that I know is okay to use. So you can configure in the file upload copyright options table text that will display down at the bottom of my slide. You can see an example here of what this text might look like. Again, I know this would vary pretty significantly from one region to another, so kind of just take this as an example. You could say, you can give the instructor options that will display to them every time they upload a file. You can use whatever options you want. They don't necessarily have to be related to copyright. If you are, checking things for accessibility, for example, you could have a question that combines copyright and accessibility or just accessibility. Think about why you are checking these, if you need to check them, if some of that work can go to the instructor instead. You configure the text that you want to have display in these different options here for uploaded files. And then you also configure what they map to. And they do indeed map to copyright options. So I know I said accessibility, but this was really specifically to capture copyright. So they map to copyright options that you'd be able to see on the library side for they'll be in the copyright status field of the citation. So you'd be able to see that the instructor said, it was okay to use this, self-declared or fair use as one of those options. And in that case, those citations can automatically complete. So this is the only way that uploaded files can automatically complete is if the instructor kind of signs off on the copyright for them. That's the idea here. So if your library, is okay with that, with having instructors, make that declaration. Again, if you're not coming from another reading list solution, instructors are probably used to loading this information into the learning management system and kind of bypassing the library in that process. So it's a similar idea that they're not necessarily bypassing the process, but they are the ones who are kind of responsible for making this copyright declaration. So I have a note here to read the documentation with an exclamation mark. This mapping table works a little bit differently than some of the other mapping tables in ALMA, but there is a note in the documentation about that. So that the mapping table is where you set up the options that you want to have display and also what they'll map to on the ALMA side. So you'd be able to see which option the instructor selected. And then you combine this with the course reserve automatic statuses table. There's a field here. Let me back up. The citation uploaded file, you can set this to complete. It will only complete where the instructor says self-declared or fair use. So those are the only citations that can automatically complete. So if you are going to use this to have these automatically complete and get them out of your task list, keep that in mind. You'll need to make sure that they map to one of those two options if you want to have them mark as complete. All right, I did warn you I'd be throwing a lot of information at you, so I feel like I am also getting a lot of information or saying a lot of information. I hope you're still with me. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here now and talk about the second bullet that I had on that original slide, which is the option to have the status change based on certain actions. I want to focus on the last one in particular, changing the status of a citation when a specific tag is added. Or you could have a couple of different tags that are added that change the status. And this is a little bit more extreme than what I've been talking about so far, but you can also configure Leganto to say that your library will only monitor specific resources, all citations automatically complete unless they have a specific tag on them. So this is something that is used in real life. There are libraries that are using this option in the way that I describe here. So you can say, we want to only review essential resources. Everything else, if we have it, we have it. If we don't have it, we don't have it. We don't buy it if we don't have it. Or maybe essential and recommended are the only ones that you review. So you can actually have everything else automatically complete, and only if it has been marked as essential or recommended would it come to your task list as something to review. Sort of as another option, the same feature, but a different way to think about it, that you monitor only the resources which have been flagged by instructors. And in this case, you rely on the instructor to add the item to Leganto, check the link, check if there's enough copies of something, and then add a specific tag if the library needs to do something. I know that this will not work for everyone. I know that some of you are probably shaking your heads, oh, we could never get away with that. But think about it, that's all. I just want you to know that this is something that's available, that you can have, rely on the tag to let you know which ones actually need to be reviewed. So the way that you would do this, again, I'm not giving you specific details, but sort of pointing you in the right direction, you configure the tags that will trigger this. You'll configure the tag or tags that trigger this, and then you would set a specific field in the course reserves automatic statuses table to give you the status that those citations will have. I'll say, I did say in the beginning, I really want to focus in this session on streamlining workflows. So that is my focus. But another thing that you can do with this flag is have specific citations to give them a different status, so they're easier for you to find or filter to. So that's another option here as well with this. They don't necessarily need to be complete or not complete, but you could give things a specific status that you want them to have when a tag is added. So that's another option here, but that's not what I'm focusing on today. So within all of these different things that I've talked about, the last step here, the way to really take advantage of whatever you have configured with these different rules, is to also have lists mark as complete when all of the citations on the list are complete. So this can happen when the last citation is marked as complete manually, or as of the July release, if all of the citations are complete when the instructor sends it to the library, then the list is considered complete. And in this case, it never shows up in your task list because there aren't any citations on the list that actually require review. So kind of going back to some of what we've talked about, if you say all of our e-resources complete and the instructor builds a list that's only e-resources and they send it to the library, it's done. So it's not something that you would need to review in this case. This is actually the default, that the lists will be marked as complete. So if you haven't previously customized this specific parameter, that will be the way that it will work. But if you have kind of played with this or you weren't sure what to do with this, I wanted to talk about this because I think this is really kind of the last step to make sure that, once you've sort of configured that more, let's say more and more citations will automatically complete, then you also don't need to be looking at the lists in situations where there's nothing for you to do with it. There's a few things on this task list that I'm not going to go into today, but I just want to point them out because, I told you it's my favorite task list, so I have to, not task list, configuration menu. So there are a few other things that you can do with this that aren't as much about streamlining workflows, but are still nice things to know about, nice things to be able to do. You can change the status of a citation when the copyright is approved. So if that's kind of the last step or the only step, and then you want it to mark as complete, you can do that. You can change the status when a file is removed, when a citation is detached from the repository, when a tag is removed. When a purchase request or a resource sharing request is created, And you can also change the list status in different situations as well. One of the big ones, I think, is when change it back to ready for processing if the instructor adds an additional item. So there's some nice options with this. If you haven't looked at this table or you haven't looked at it in a while, I do encourage you to take a look. We've added a lot of new options to this table over the last year. We are winding down here. The last thing that I want to talk about is just that there are bulk jobs. We looked at the Citation Insights job a little bit, but I want to remind you about some of these other ones as well. All of these jobs have been either created or updated in the last year. So again, if you implemented a while ago and you haven't really been, making too many changes to your workflows or to your processes, I do encourage you to take a look at this. I will pull out some highlights from some of them. There's a group that are under the admin run a job, which I'll kind of talk through. There's also the process and enrich citations job. So I have a few screenshots. I thought that screenshots would be easier than me kind of digging through Alma to show you all of them. This is the reading list citation update job. You can use this to do quite a bit. You can change the status of citations. You can change now even the type of citations, change the due dates, add or remove tags, remove alerts. Maybe you want to go through and kind of clean up some of your old, purchase request alerts or things like that. You can do that. You can remove files. But what I really wanted to point out here is the stuff down here at the bottom to synchronize the citations with the repository. You probably already have discovered, or if you haven't discovered, I'm sure you will at some point, that when you change the bib record in Alma, it doesn't automatically update the citation metadata. The idea here is that the citation is sort of owned by the instructor and the bib is owned by the library. So therefore, you may not want them to have it automatically update the citation. However, there is now the option to do this in bulk. So you can run this job against a set of citations, and if the bibliographic record has been updated, it will update the citation metadata. That's this middle checkbox here. The other thing you can do here is essentially find citations where the associated bibliographic record has been deleted, and then customize what you want to do. Do you want to delete the citation or do you just want to detach it? You can also run this job in report mode, which will give you a report as if you had run the job. So you'd be able to identify citations where the bib record had been updated or deleted without actually making any changes to the citations. So this is a really nice thing to be aware of and a really powerful job, especially if you are doing, a lot of purchase requests and you have brief bibs that are associated with citations. You can run this job to keep that information more up to date, and also, as I said, identify certain circumstances. So that's the citation update job. There's also the reading list bulk update job, which is making changes at the list level. Some of the same sorts of things, changing the status, changing the publication status, locking lists. You can also change, let's see, what else we want to point out. This is new, adding owners or removing owners. If you have, maybe a couple of subject librarians who should be set as owners for all of the lists within their department, you can do that in bulk. You can remove the course association in bulk if you need to. You can reset the reading list if you don't do rollover, reset the information. So you can do, again, quite a bit in bulk using the reading list job. The last one is the course job, and this one I think is hopefully getting a little bit more explanatory, but you can update course details in bulk. So the processing department, academic department, the terms, the instructors, removing instructors or removing specific instructors, remove the association with the list. But this one here at the bottom, this create list reminder email, this is a newer option on this job. And this is a way to send an email to instructors when when you run the job is when you do it, but there's different options for how this will work. It essentially sends an email that's a reminder to them to create their reading list. So you can say we only want to send it where there isn't already a list associated with a course. We only want to send it, if the list hasn't yet been submitted to the library, or you can send it unconditionally. But this is a nice way to kind of remind instructors that it's time to start building their lists. This doesn't quite line up with the theme of the session today, which is streamlining these workflows, but I also know that a lot of libraries end up spending quite a bit of time sort of chasing your instructors down, letting them know that it's time, asking them if they're planning to create a list, that type of thing. So this job lets you do that in bulk. So just a reminder really that these jobs exist. So if you are, finding yourself with sort of tasks that you need to do across reading lists, across citations, across courses, remember these jobs as an option there. Okay, so with that, that is everything that I had prepared. So we do have quite a bit of time for questions. I don't know if you have questions. I'm not seeing any more here. Jenny, do you see questions that I haven't answered yet?
No, I do not.
We will give it just a minute here, just in case you're still digesting a little bit, or didn't want to stop and type up your question. Sometimes I feel like I talk so quickly that if you were to take a minute to type a question, you'd probably miss something. So we'll give it another minute just in case. Maybe while we're waiting, I will say I hope this was helpful. I am always happy to get feedback. Let me put my email address here. If you have, reasons that this doesn't work for you that I haven't addressed yet, please feel free to reach out. If you, want to know about something else, feel free to reach out. We will, as I said, make the slides available, make the recording available. I also will say one more time that I really think this is something you should think about on a somewhat regular basis with Leganto. The way that you use it over time is likely to change. We are always developing new options. You may have or build different relationships with your instructors, your academics about these course materials. Whatever you do during implementation, I know a lot of times you do just because you're trying to get live and start using Leganto. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way that it's ever going to work for you. So if you haven't done much to customize some of these options, to think about your workflows, I do encourage you to do that. And not just now, but maybe next summer again, something to think about.
Jessie, I did have a couple questions pop in, and they're coming
Okay,
to
great.
me privately, so
Okay,
you're not going
perfect.
to see them.
Perfect.
Is there a list available of the different jobs you can run on Leganto?
That is a good question. I don't think so. I don't think there's like a full list somewhere of all the jobs that are related to Leganto. I can do a little bit, let me zoom this in a bit. I can do a kind of small, um, set for you, I guess. So under the admin run a job, the 4 that are here that are relevant to Leganto are the 4 that I highlighted: the citation update, the list update, the course update, and the citations insight job. So those are the 4 that are under this, manage jobs and sets area. These are all ones that you run against a set of records. There's also some under the fulfillment menu that are related to Leganto. So in the advanced tools here, we have the process and enrich citations. Let me just open this one up because I realized I didn't have a screenshot. This one you run against specific courses, either a specific course or based on the start and end date of the course. So the idea here would be, all of the courses from this term. And this will run the resource locate. So attempt to link these citations up with your library inventory. You specify how it's going to handle it in situations where there's multiple matches, if you want to look at them manually and choose one, or if you want to have it, prefer electronic, for example, as the top priority. This is also the one that you can use to validate external links that I talked about. You can do try to locate with your link resolver. So that's the process and enrich citations job. Also under the fulfillment menu here, let me just take a look. I think there's a couple more. The citation alternate suggestions job. This will look for alternative formats or editions for citations. So same thing, you would run it against a set, and then it gives you a list of all of the citations that have in your ALMA repository alternative formats or alternative editions. And then here's the bulk citation copyright recalculate job. So if you need to recalculate the copyrights, if you're using the Leganto automated copyright workflows. So those are really the big ones. There's also like the course loader job, the enrollment loader job. Those are all in the integration profiles under the configuration menu, general, and then integration profiles. So the course loader, the reading list loader, and then the course enrollment loader are there. So we don't have a written list, but if you listen carefully now, you have a list. Those are the ones I can think of anyway. I see
And
another.
there was one more
Okay.
question I sent to you. Did you see it there?
Yes. So
Okay.
when you say Leganto can be set to change the status of a citation when a citation is detached from the repository, do you mean when an item is withdrawn or removed? This is a good question. This actually kind of ties into some of what we were saying. So actually, if you were to use this job, you know what, I think I'm just going to use the screenshots that I have here rather than find it, just because you have to go through the process of selecting a set. This job here. So the synchronized changes with repository. If you do say, when bibliographic records are deleted, I want to detach the citation, that's what would trigger this. So it won't do it automatically when the item is deleted, but you could combine it with this job and then you could change the status. And again, you can set those custom citation statuses. So you could even set a specific status, deleted record, I don't know what your status would be, but a specific status that you want to have them changed to, so that you can then, more easily filter to them on the citation task list and find just those citations, and then from there decide what you're going to do with them, if you're going to delete them or try to get another copy or whatever it may be. So to answer your question, it won't do that automatically, but you would be able to combine it with this. This is the citation update task to do it in bulk.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. That's whoever asked that. That's a really great use case. So thank you for putting that out there.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, I think most of you probably know where to find me if you do come up with questions, but I'll put my email up on here one more time just in case. I really do mean it. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions, or if you were having trouble putting them into words for the chat. We're definitely here to help. So let us know kind of how things are going, what you thought, and also if there's something that I didn't cover here today as well.
Thank you, Jessie, and thank you everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.